In January 2026, tensions between the United States and Russia reached a dangerous turning point. Military pressure, diplomatic breakdowns, and economic warfare combined to create one of the most volatile moments in recent history. Analysts warn that this confrontation is no longer theoretical. It is unfolding in real time, across oceans, borders, and political alliances, with consequences that could reshape global power for years to come. On January 7, 2026, European Command seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker named Marinera in the North Atlantic after a 2-week pursuit. The operation marked a rare and aggressive enforcement action at sea. What made it even more alarming was the scale of resources involved, signaling that sanctions enforcement has entered a far more militarized phase. During the pursuit, Russia reportedly dispatched a submarine to protect the tanker, escalating the standoff to a level unseen in years. Though no shots were fired, both sides operated within striking distance. Military experts described the encounter as one miscalculation away from direct conflict, highlighting how fragile the current balance between Washington and Moscow has become. The tanker seizure fits into a broader pattern known as gray zone warfare. Russia has intensified drone incursions near NATO airspace and launched cyber attacks targeting European communication systems. These actions stay below the threshold of open war, yet steadily test NATO's resolve, exploiting legal ambiguity while increasing psychological and strategic pressure. At the same time, nuclear stability is eroding. The New START Treaty, the final agreement limiting U.S. and Russian strategic nuclear weapons, is set to expire in February 2026. Without it, both nations face no binding limits on their arsenals, raising fears of a renewed nuclear arms race in an already unstable global environment. Both Washington and Moscow have hinted at the possibility of resuming nuclear weapons testing, ending a moratorium that has lasted more than 3 decades. The doomsday clock now stands at 89 seconds to midnight, a stark symbol of how close the world feels to catastrophic escalation amid collapsing arms control frameworks. Beyond Europe, power struggles are intensifying in the Western Hemisphere. On January 3, 2026, U.S.-led operations in Venezuela resulted in the arrest of President Nicolás Maduro. The move was framed by Washington as restoring stability, but critics see it as a direct challenge to Russian and Chinese influence in Latin America. Russia condemned the Venezuela operation as blatant interference, warning that it sets a dangerous precedent. For Moscow, the event signaled that the United States is forcefully reasserting the Monroe Doctrine, drawing firm lines against rival powers operating near its traditional sphere of influence. Meanwhile, Ukraine remains a central battlefield in the broader confrontation. Russia continues large-scale drone and missile strikes against Ukrainian energy infrastructure. U.S. officials described 2026 as a decisive year, pushing diplomatic shuttle talks, though European allies remain cautious and divided over Washington's long-term intentions. Economic warfare has become just as critical as military pressure. U.S. sanctions on major Russian energy firms like Rosneft and Lukoil remain in place, targeting the backbone of Russia's economy. Energy revenue continues to be Moscow's primary source of state funding, making it a key pressure point. The United States is also pursuing a strategy to flood global markets with Venezuelan oil, aiming to depress prices and weaken Russia's financial position. While effective on paper, this approach risks destabilizing global energy markets and has drawn concern from economists and international partners alike. Sanctions enforcement has exposed divisions among Western allies. The US, UK, and European Union increasingly disagree on how aggressively to apply restrictions. These policy gaps complicate global trade, leaving multinational corporations navigating conflicting regulations and growing uncertainty. Russia has labeled the tanker seizure an illegal act, accusing the United States of violating maritime law. Moscow argues that such actions undermine international norms and increase the risk of military escalation in international waters, where legal authority is often contested. Inside NATO, anxiety is growing. Some members quietly support strong enforcement measures, while others fear that aggressive tactics could provoke retaliation. Leaders worry that incidents like the Marinera seizure could drag the alliance into a confrontation it may not be fully prepared to manage. Public rhetoric on both sides has hardened. U.S. officials describe their actions as necessary to uphold international order, while Russian leaders portray them as evidence of Western hostility. This narrative battle fuels nationalism, making compromise politically difficult in both capitals. Civilian consequences are also mounting. Sanctions, cyber disruptions, and energy instability are affecting everyday life across multiple regions. Experts warn that prolonged economic pressure and infrastructure damage risk humanitarian fallout that could deepen resentment and prolong conflict. Within the United States, political debate is intensifying. Supporters argue that decisive action deters aggression, while critics warn that escalation could spiral beyond control. Lawmakers face growing pressure to balance national security with the risks of prolonged global confrontation. In Russia, state media has amplified messages of resistance and sovereignty. The government emphasizes military readiness and closer ties with non-Western partners, presenting the confrontation as a fight against containment rather than a series of isolated incidents. With arms control collapsing and military encounters increasing, analysts warn that traditional safeguards are disappearing. The absence of clear communication channels and binding agreements raises the risk that a single crisis could escalate faster than leaders can contain it. As 2026 unfolds, the US-Russia rivalry stands at a historic crossroads. From tanker seizures to nuclear uncertainty, from economic warfare to regional power shifts, each move carries global consequences. The world now watches closely, hoping restraint prevails before competition turns into catastrophe.